In the midst of World War II, one of the most devastating conflicts in human history, few people remember that Mexico also took part in the fight for freedom. It was a small but powerful contribution, rooted in courage and sacrifice. This story is about the 201st Fighter Squadron, better known as the Aztec Eagles, the only Mexican military unit that fought overseas during World War II. In 1942, Mexico was a neutral country trying to stay away from the chaos that had consumed Europe and Asia. But neutrality ended abruptly on May 13, when German submarines attacked two Mexican oil tankers, Potrero del Llano and Faja de Oro, while they were carrying oil to the United States. Dozens of Mexican sailors died at sea, and for the first time, the war had touched Mexican soil through the waters of the Gulf. The attacks caused public outrage. The Mexican government, led by the President Manuel Ávila Camacho, decided that the nation could no longer remain passive. On May 28, Mexico formally declared war on the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. At first, the country's involvement focused on economic support, producing raw materials, oil, and food for the Allied cause. But Mexico wanted to demonstrate that it was not only an economic partner, but a nation willing to fight for peace and democracy. So, in 1944, after long negotiations with the United States, the Mexican Air Force created a special unit that would join the Allies in combat. That unit was the 201st Fighter Squadron, a group that would carry both the Mexican flag and the hopes of a nation entering the global stage for the first time. More than 300 men volunteered. They include pilots, mechanics, radar operators, and support staff. For many of them, it was their first time leaving Mexico, their first time flying advanced aircraft, and their first time encountered with the harsh discipline of war. The pilots were sent to Randolph Field, Texas, and later to other U.S. air bases to train with the P-14 Thunderbolt, one of the most powerful fighter planes of the time. They spent months learning English, aerial combat maneuvers, bombing tactics, and the coordination required for missions in the Pacific. But the training period was not easy. The Mexican pilots faced cultural barriers, language difficulties, and in some cases, discrimination and racism from local communities. Still, they remained determined to prove their worth, not only as soldiers, but as representatives of their country. One of the pilots later recalled, "We were not only fighting against racism, we were also fighting to show that Mexico could stand shoulder to shoulder with the great powers of the world." By early 1945, after nearly a year of preparation, the squadron was ready for deployment. They left Mexico City in March, receiving blessings from the family and cheered from the crowd as their transport ship, the Fair Eagle, departed from the Pacific. Their destination was the Philippines, where first battles were still raging. There, they joined the 5th U.S. Air Force, commanded by General Douglas MacArthur. When the Aztec Eagles arrived, the Philippines was in ruins. Cities had been destroyed, and Japanese forces continued to resist in the mountains of Luzon. From their base in Porac, Pampanga, the Mexican pilots began flying combat missions. Between June and August of 1945, they completed 96 missions, mostly providing close air support and ground attacks against Japanese troops, supply depots, and transport lines. They flew nearly 2,000 hours of combat, destroying ammunition dumps, vehicles, and enemy positions. The missions were dangerous. The pilots faced anti-aircraft fire, tropical storms, and a constant threat of mechanical failure far from friendly lines. Several members of the squadron died in action or in training accidents. Among them, there were Lieutenants José Espinosa Fuentes, Héctor Espinosa Galván, and Mario López Portillo. Their deaths were deeply felt by the companions who continued flying in their memory. When Japan finally surrendered in August 1945, the war was over. The Aztec Eagles had completed their mission. The contribution might have seemed small compared to the vast Allied force, but its symbolic power was enormous. They had proven that Mexico, a nation recovering from revolution and internal struggles, could play a responsible role on the world stage. They had also built new bonds of friendship with the Filipino people, who thanked the Mexican pilots for helping liberate their country from the occupation. In September 1945, the squadron returned to Mexico after serving in World War II. They were celebrated as national heroes with parades, medals, and honor from the United States and the Philippines. For a brief moment, the entire nation united in pride, honoring the bravery of these young pilots who had represented Mexico on the global stage. However, as the years went by, their story faded from public memory. Textbooks barely mentioned their name, and most veterans returned to quiet civilian lives as teachers, mechanics, or farmers. The once glorious Aztec Eagles became ordinary citizens, their heroism largely forgotten by the country they had served with such dedication. Decades later, historians began to rediscover their legacy. The squadron came to be seen not only as a symbol of courage, but also as an example of Mexico's complex relationship with the United States, a bond marked by cooperation but also inequality. Their mission represents both national pride and the desire for international recognition at a time when Mexico saw its place among the world's powers. The story of this squadron also raised profound questions about war, identity, and purpose. What motivated these young men to risk their lives so far from home? Patriotism, adventure, or hope for respect abroad? Their journey reveals that war is not only about weapons and victories, but also about the human emotion, sacrifices, and idols that define a nation's spirit. Today, although nearly all members of the 201st Squadron have passed away, their memory endures through monuments, museums, and ceremonies in Mexico and the Philippines. They are remembered as ambassadors of courage and unity. The Aztec Eagles remind the world that bravery knows no borders, and that even a small nation can rise, take flight, and stand for freedom.